Chapter 16, Get away from her, Vika's POV, I don't want to go with you. I snapped. I thrashed against Sean's grip. They were servants like me. They both had their shirts off. I locked my eyes back on Devi and Sean. What the hell were they planning? Asher wanted our relationship to move forward. I knew what that meant. Do you want to mark me? I asked breathily. Asher pressed his thumb against my neck, the spot where he would bite and mark me. I sighed and closed my eyes, drunk off his touch. Yes, I want to mark you, Asher confessed. He kissed my neck, sucking gently. I moaned and tilted my head to the side, giving him better access. Everyone will know you're my mate, the princess, my father. No one can keep us apart or come between us, he muttered, kissing my neck again. I wrapped my hands around his shoulders, squeezing his hardened muscles. Yes, I wanted him to mark me so badly that my entire core was filled with heat. I held back another moan, but the inner voice that represented my sanity rang out. Get it together, Vika. Stay calm. This isn't the right time and place. You don't want to be confined to the dark passageway like rats, right? No, not yet, I gasped, pressing his lips to stop him. I pushed Asher away a little. I could see the light leave his eyes. It's my fault, I'm pushing too hard. Asher kissed my fingertip and shook his head. No, I want you to mark me. I grabbed Asher's cheeks and raised myself on tiptoes so I could kiss him quickly. He put his hands on my hips, grunting in pleasure. Devi ran over to me and tended to slap me across the face. I immediately caught her wrist and asked, I'm off today. I pulled back from the kiss, wishing I didn't have to, but I would love it more than you marking me. I just think it's not the right time and place for us to mark each other. It needs to be a time when it will be really special, when it feels like we both need it, I explained. That sounds much more romantic, Asher admitted with a laugh. All right, we'll wait, I nodded. Asher respected my wishes to wait. Could he be any more perfect? There are other ways we can get sweaty together, I said with a giggle. Oh really? Asher asked, rubbing his hands up and down my hips. I pushed him away playfully. Training tonight. We can get really sweaty, I said. Asher chuckled. Then, midnight tonight in the labyrinth for our secret date. Chapter 18, Secret Maids, Vika's POV. I walked through the castle with a goofy smile on my face. How could I not? I had 1 week off, and Asher had me all mixed up in all the best ways. We may have a week to do secret training. Shoo, someone will hear, I heard Devi whisper. Oh no, I didn't want to run into Devi again. She'd gone crazy to let 2 he-wolves have their way with me. I turned to run in the opposite direction, but another voice caught my ears. No one is around, I have checked, a male voice said. Wait, was that Asher's brother, Prince Regent Lucian? What were Lucian and Devi doing meeting secretly? What do you want? How dare you? Sean hit me in the crook of the leg, which led me to let go of Devi and kneeled on the floor. I could not control my curiosity. I held my breath and quietly inched closer to the hallway corner and listened in. Devi sighed, and I heard a smacking sound like they were kissing or something. Don't pull away from me, Lucian said. Devi grunted. I pressed myself to the wall behind me, staying perfectly quiet and still. We shouldn't be meeting like this, Devi argued. You know it's wrong. It isn't wrong, not with the way we feel about each other, Lucian said. You have no idea how I feel, Devi snapped. I peeked my head out carefully with my heart almost jumping to my throat. Thanks to the moon goddess, Devi's back was to me. Prince Regent Lucian was focused on Devi in his arms. It was hard to notice me. Yes, I know Devi, Lucian chuckled and whispered in Devi's ear. You love me. Just admit it. No way. Devi raised her volume and quickly realized it and lowered her voice. Are you joking me? Just because you're engaged to my loser brother doesn't mean you love him, Lucian said. I know how you feel about me. You're crazy. Devi left Lucian's arms. Her stiletto heels were knocking on the floor. Her footsteps stopped because Lucian grabbed her wrist and pressed his lips on hers, which even shocked me. Devi gave a sweet sigh that bordered on a moan. Stop that, Devi whispered, panting. Stop me, Lucian countered and kept kissing. It is time to teach you another lesson, Devi said, yanking my hair. She made me look up at her. Let me go. I insisted firmly. Some soft, heavy breathing and gasping ran into my ear. Lucian, stop. Devi stopped him. You can't deny that you love me. We're mates. You can't fight that, Lucian said. I nearly choked on my breath. What? Devi and Lucian were mates? How was that possible? I couldn't believe what breaking news I had found. I had to get out of there before they noticed me, or I might not be able to stay hidden. One more shocking declaration and I would give myself away for sure. My hands covered my mouth to help me keep quiet, and my inner voice comforted me. Okay, you got this, Vika. Just take a deep breath and relax. Just move quietly, they'll never know you are here. It doesn't matter if we are mates, Devi was saying. Asher and I are engaged, and he is going to be the perfect alpha. So, all you love is power and throne, is it? Lucian scoffed. Don't worry, Devi. I'll prove I'm so much better than my idiot brother. Oh, that didn't sound good. I'd have to warn Asher. I heard footsteps down the hall. Someone was getting close to me. I peeled myself off the wall and turned around, coming face to face with Sean. What the hell are you doing here lurking around corners? Sean asked me. I swallowed hard, her eyes brightened with anger. There was no way I could escape. I was just leaving, I said. Devi snorted, held a finger up and waggled it back and forth in front of my face. She said. This is a lesson all lowly omegas need to learn, especially you. You hear that? Lucian asked. Suddenly, Devi and Lucian came to meet Sean and me around the corner. Oh crap. This was a bad situation, ignoring Princess Devi, 1 Omega against 1 Gamma, plus a beta-level male wolf. The likelihood of me escaping unscathed was probably lower than the likelihood of Asher showing up. Well, Lucian said, snarling at me, what are you doing here? You little maid, I was just passing by, I said, rolling my eyes. Don't believe her, she's a snitch and a rat, Devi said, crossing her arm. That was strange considering her tantrum. Why didn't she ask Sean to catch me today? Who would you snitch to? Lucian asked, raising a blonde eyebrow at me. I glared back at him. He may have had Asher's eyes, but I could only read sinister from Lucian's eyes, not beautiful. That slut would go for Asher. She's been trying to seduce him, Devi scoffed, standing there with no madness. Sean was the same. Well, I can't let you do that. You've heard too much. I'll have to take care of you so you'll never spill a word of what you heard, Lucian snarled. Lucian took a step toward me and raised his arm. As I took a step backward, Devi grabbed his hand. Don't, she said quickly. I raised an eyebrow at her and turned to Sean, who was just staring at me with anger. No action. What's wrong with them? Compared to yesterday, the two of them are simply different beings. Do you think you can seduce a prince? Devi threw me back on the floor. I don't know what your problem is, but I'm not taking this anymore, I said and stood up. Lucian's eyes widened, and then he glared at Devi. What are you doing? He asked. We can't let her go. She's not even worth it, Devi said, coming to my defense. You are quite right, Your Highness. Sean walked directly behind Devi. Fine, if you don't mind, Lucian sighed. Let's go. He put his arm around Devi's shoulders, and they walked away. Sean followed closely in their footsteps. Okay, what just happened? What bizarre world had I fallen into? Sean and Devi were defending me? Had I hit my head earlier? I ran my fingers through my hair, checking for any lumps and bumps. No, my head was fine. Could it be that Asher said something to them yesterday? I was still shocked by what I'd seen and experienced when I snuck out and met with Asher at the center of the garden labyrinth. He had a training sword in his hand, swinging it back and forth. I stopped walking, just watching how strong and masculine he looked with the sword. I enjoyed seeing how his muscles bulged, the sweat on his brow glistened in the moonlight. Oh, hey, I was wondering when you'd show up, Asher said. I started, fanning myself with my hand to try and cool down. Sorry, I'm late, I said. Asher shrugged. He didn't seem to care. I had to tell him what I'd heard. I didn't think it would be easy for him to hear, but he still had to know. Oh, do you actually think you get a say in what happens to you? Devi asked. That is so cute, isn't it, Sean? Asher, on my way here, I overheard something between your brother and Princess Devi, I said quickly. Are you okay? Did they give you a hard time? Asher set the training sword down and quickly grabbed my wrist. I'm good, I smiled at him. His hand was so warm. Wait, that's not what I wanted to tell you. Did you know he was Devi's mate? But when Devi told him that it didn't matter, he got pretty upset, I explained. Did Devi reject Lucian? Asher's eyes were widened since I told him Devi was Lucian's mate. I shook my head. Not officially. He wasn't too happy about being reminded that she is engaged to you though. He claimed he would make Devi see that he was better than you. You should be careful, careful? Asher raised his eyebrow and smiled. He did often challenge me since we were children, but he never won. Please, be careful for me, I said and took his hand. How can I resist such a sweet request? Asher smirked. There was something else about Devi and Sean, I said, creasing my brow. What happened? Asher asked, his eye bright with concern. He put his hand on my cheek. Lucian threatened me not to tell anyone what I saw today. He was going to attack me, but Sean and Devi stopped him. It was the weirdest thing, I said. Asher just nodded and smiled. He rubbed my face with his thumb. That's good, isn't it? It is, My Highness, Sean said in a bored drawl. She was standing next to Devi's vanity, doing her nails. Why wasn't he surprised? He really did something to Devi and Sean. I grabbed his hand and asked, what have you done to them? Chapter 19, The Next Level, Vika's POV, Asher, did you threaten them? I asked. No, it's my voice. Asher shook his head and looked up at the sky. I went to his side and took his hand. When I was a teenager, I discovered this ability. It's like commanding voice, Asher told me. I can give orders to anyone ranked beta and lower, and they obey. You know, that sounds like the alpha's voice, I teased, bouncing my eyebrows up and down. I never thought about that, Asher said, his brow creasing deeply. I reached up and smoothed the creases away with my fingers. He was far too handsome to worry so much. So, what did you say to Devi and Sean? I asked. Asher smirked. I told them not to let any harm come to you. He admitted. Wow, you mean I don't have to worry about them beating on me from today? I asked. That was the most amazing thing that anyone had ever done for me, like a warm blanket around my shoulders. He protected me. The commands only last for a week, so be careful when you're alone with them again, he warned sternly. Thanks for the heads up, I said with a half-hearted eye roll. I just had to do something. Seeing how they treated you, my maid, Asher grumbled. See, Vika, you're an omega, you're nothing, you'll never belong with Asher, Devi said. Oh no. My eyes widened. I know the feeling, I said, taking Asher's hand. I've always wanted to fight back against Devi and Sean. It isn't my place. My brave warrior, Asher muttered. I'll teach you to protect yourself and others. You know what? I grinned. I'm always dreaming one day I become the greatest pack protector in Bitha. Then, I'll be so proud to stand at your side, warrior and prince. Pretty cool, wasn't it? You're already 3 times as brave as any pack protector I know. Asher tossed one of the training swords to me. I caught it, turning the blade up and smirking at him. I'm so proud of you how you are now, for everything you've gone through and the amazing woman you are because of it, he added. My cheeks reddened, and I rocked back on my heels, my stomach twisting like a coiled snake. Alright, let's get sweaty, Asher chuckled, lunging forward. Attack, parry, jump back, attack, cross blades, duck, deep inhale. Sweat tickled the back of my neck. Concentrate, Vika, don't get lost in your thoughts. Focus and attack, ow. I groaned when the blunt side of Asher's sword struck my arm. I dropped my practice sword and rubbed my sore arm. Oh, Vika, I'm sorry, are you okay? Asher asked, grabbing my arm where he'd struck me. It wasn't a deadly blow, I said, giggling. Asher's bright eyes softened, and he smiled lightly. Maybe that's enough training for now. Asher cupped my cheeks, staring into my eyes. Does Devi know I am Asher's mate? How could she? Asher wouldn't have told her, would he? No, I knew that Asher wouldn't betray me like that. Did you have something else in mind? I croaked. Asher's light fingertips seared hot trails across my skin. I trembled, my mind going blank as a clean slate. Inhale, exhale, each breath shaking. The prince pressed his lips to mine. My heart hammered against my ribs, my ears filled with the thunder of rushing blood. I wrapped my arms around Asher's neck, pulling my body against his. Electric tingles shot over my skin, straight to my core. Hot liquid pooled between my legs. Asher's hands ran down my sides as his tongue parted my lips. He pulled me closer, a warm, hard bulge pressing into my hips. I gasped, eyes snapping open. Was that? Oh, my moon goddess. Wait, I whispered. For what? Asher asked, his lips brushing mine, breath sliding down my throat. Why was I stopping him? I wanted this, my whole body ached for it. Nothing, I gasped. I pulled Asher's lips to mine again. It's okay, Asher whispered and kissed my ear, grunting. He grabbed my butt, lifting me right off the ground. I wrapped my legs around his waist. Tremor after tremor rippled through me from my scalp to my toes. Asher dropped down on his knees and laid me on my back. With arm lips against mine, hungry, needy kisses, and nips down my neck, I tightened my legs around Asher, pulling him on top of me. Her hands were so tight on my arms that my skin was bruising. "You have no choice, Omega," Sean hissed. "Calm down, Vika. Devi just wants you to admit to something. She doesn't know anything. Don't tell her anything." His hands lifted my shirt, pushing it over my head. "I'm going to make you mine, now," Asher growled, attacking my neck again. Feathery fingers stroked down my stomach, lower. Lower into the waist of my leggings. And lower. "Oh, goddess. Oh, goddess." A finger traced my swollen folds, cold hit against the scorching heat inside me. He spread the hot liquid around my entrance before slipping it inside. I arched into his touch, my eyes rolling back, in. Out. In. Out. His finger teased me. I writhed in the grass, grabbing fistfuls of it, ripping it right out of the dirt. Asher," I gasped. He smirked at me and slipped his finger out of me, tracing my folds again, the tip pressed against my sensitive, hardened nub. He rubbed in a tantalizing circle. "Ah," I cried out, heat spreading to every inch of my skin. My muscles tightened, and I moaned again and again, head lolling from side to side. Yes, sweet, sweet release. My skin was still hot and tight, compressing around me like a straitjacket. I needed more. "No," I whimpered when Asher pulled his hand away. He opened his clothes. I trailed my eyes over his glistening chest, pressing my fingers to his abs. The muscle barely gave under my touch. Asher gasped, eyelids fluttering. I licked my lips, eyes wandering to his pulsing, hardened manhood. "Oh my," I panted. My eyes felt whiter than a full moon as I stared. He was firm and erect. My body got hot and wet all over again. "I don't know what you're talking about," I insisted, turning my nose into the air and holding my ground. Asher brought his fingers to my chin. He leaned in and kissed me again, pushing me back on the ground. That hardened part of him rested like a weight against my thigh. I wanted him. I needed to feel him inside me. I grabbed at Asher's shoulders, clinging like my life depended on it. "I want you, Asher. I want all of you," I murmured against his lips. "Huh," he grunted. My breath quivered when his rock-firm organ pressed against my entrance. "Please," I begged. As Asher pushed into me, I moaned. My legs quaked against his hips, my insides tightened like a boa constrictor. Panting, I buried my face in his shoulder, his moans muffled by my hair. With each inch that buried itself in me, my hips felt like they were going to split apart. My eyes pinched shut, fingernails clawing into his skin. I clenched my jaw. "Does it hurt?" Asher's whisper caressed my ear. "No," I whimpered. "Yeah, who was that convincing? I'll go slow," he promised. I took another shaking breath as Asher started to move his hips. Once. Twice. Each time he slid in, the pain melted away. No, it didn't just melt, it transformed, I gasped, throwing my head back on the ground. Ripple after ripple of pleasure spread through my thighs, into my stomach, down my legs, and through every muscle and fiber of my body. Devi danced around me, laughing. "Lesson 1, Omegas belong with Omegas," she said, waving a hand over the he-wolves. I needed to be closer to Asher. I arched my back, every inch of my skin covered in him, soaking up his scent. What glory, what sweet pleasure. It was like touching nirvana. Asher's lips sucked gently on my neck, then he kissed along my shoulder. His tongue traced a pattern on my skin. My eyes rolled back in my head. I moaned wantonly, a delicious pressure building in my core every time Asher thrust deeper into me. The pressure was so strong I was sure to pop. Another moan ripped from my lips, and pop. I did. I cried out in ecstasy, muscles tightening like a bowstring as gushes of hot fluid coated my inner thighs. Asher released a guttural groan, his arms tightening around me almost painfully, panting. We clung to each other, legs still tangled. I sighed, my body turning to a puddle of goo. My skin felt electric, buzzing and humming blissfully. "Vika," Asher whispered in my ear. My eyelids closed. I tried to open them, but I couldn't, so relaxed. I muttered, "Chapter 20, full of surprises." Asher's POV. I held Vika against my chest as she slept. Her warm breath tickled my skin. I never wanted to let her go. My eyelids drooped. Apparently, I was just as tired as she was. I opened my eyes wide, looking up at the sky. If I slept, I might have the same nightmare. I just wanted to hold Vika. Yawn. Nope, I couldn't fight it off anymore. They both smirked at me. and one of them licked his lower lip. My stomach soured. I knew exactly what Devi meant now. I got one last look at Vika's gentle smile. She was peaceful in her sleep. I might have a good dream. I just hoped so before I couldn't open my eyes again. Nightmare, fire, smoke, white fog, screaming. My mouth was still covered by someone. Here it came, that nightmare. I stayed quiet, waiting for the moment when I was released. I rushed out of the curtain when hearing Queen Krisha shout to King Magnus. After wandering in the fog for a while, I tripped and fell. It was Queen Krisha with her mouth opened and closed. "What do you want to say, Queen?" I asked, but no sound came out. Wide eyes sought me, her heart racing so fast I could see her pulse jumping in her neck. "What are you trying to say?" I asked. The annoying fog came again, and I struggled to see the Queen's face and wondered if she had something to tell me. A gust of white fog swept through the room, carrying my words away. The fog blocked my vision again. Did the Queen hear me? Could I affect my dreams like that? A scream tore from her throat, and she laid still. "Stand up, Asher, stand up." I pleaded with the 9-year-old body I was trapped in, but my legs locked on the floor. Why? I couldn't stand up. I crawled closer to the Queen. "Arg," I groaned, tears blurring my vision. I wiped at my eyes. There was too much fog. "Queen Krisha." I called out through the thick, strange fog, waving my arms back and forth. I clenched my fists at my sides and glared at Devi. She wasn't going to get away with this. "Here are 2 males that are your rank. D daughter. D to Vika." "What?" I called through the smoke. There hadn't been this much fog before, had there? Was it stop me from finding the truth in my dream? Or did it come to cloud my memories? Vika. So, I had heard her correctly. The fog was turning thin. Queen Krisha's body convulsed. No. I reached out toward her, but I was too late. The Queen was gone. My stomach turned, then I felt a yank in my body. I cried out soundlessly. An invisible arm dragged me back. "Krisha." I knew that voice. It became clearer in every dream. My father was kneeling on the ground by her body. I watched wide-eyed as he wrapped his arms around the dead Queen and hugged her to his chest. "Krisha, why are you so cruel to me?" he blubbered, burying his face in her neck. What was my dad doing? Had this really happened? "I didn't mean for this to happen," he said. He picked her up off the floor and placed her beside King Magnus. "Why you?" "Ugh." The king's words failed him. I could see how pale he was, even though brain fog of my nightmare. His lips shriveled and black. Poison? King Magnus had been poisoned? I hadn't heard of that. My dad set Queen Krisha on the bed. He brushed her hair from her face and leaned down, pressing his nose to her forehead. "Okay, this was just getting creepy. They are here to teach you how to be a good she-wolf." "Oops, Omega," Devi chuckled with her mouth covered. My father turned around and walked away. King Magnus groaned and reached for Krisha's hand. The fog came at me again. My dream dissolved around me in the fog, melting like water splashed on the paint. In the next second, I was standing in the hallway. Flames were roaring, and pack members were screaming and running. Through the flames, I saw a maid clutching a child to her breast, running through the fire and smoke. The maid was young with black curly hair and brown eyes. She looked familiar. I'd seen her before, cloak whipping around her in the wind. She clutched the baby like she was the most precious treasure in the world. Why did I keep seeing this? Other mothers were fleeing the castle with their children, so why did I keep seeing the same woman? Wait. I called to her. I tried to run after her, but my feet stuck to the ground like glue. My arm and neck muscles popped as I struggled. The maid looked over her shoulder at me. I stopped struggling when I saw her fold the corner of her cloak over the child's face. "What? Hiding the baby? Don't tell anyone about that baby, Asher. Never tell anyone." That's what I kept repeating to myself. End nightmare, arg. I jerked away, practically throwing Vika off of me. Breathing heavily, I tightened my arms around her and rocked her against my chest. "My beautiful mate, my brave warrior, I'm never going to let you go," I sighed, falling back into the grass. "No fucking way. I'm not letting anyone touch me," I snapped. I turned around and headed to the door. It was sickening. I kissed the top of Vika's head, my thumb slowly stroking her shoulder. What was that? I moved my thumb again. I definitely felt something. It was soft as the rest of her skin but different. A tingle jab ran through my finger like I'd pricked it on a throne. Ow, I muttered, shaking my hand. What was on Vika's skin? I propped myself up on my elbow so I could see her shoulder. A birthmark, puckered and darker than the rest of Vika's skin. There was a crescent, waxing moon birthmark on her right shoulder. I'd kissed it while we were making love. My tongue had heated up when I put it on her shoulder. Asher? Vika stuttered. I brushed my finger down her cheek as her eyes fluttered open. I'm here, I said softly, smiling down at her. She blinked a few more times, and I pushed her hair out of her face. Asher, you look. She trailed off, her brow creasing. Like you've seen a ghost, I sighed, shaking my head. I fell asleep too. Did you have another nightmare? Vika rose up on her knees and took my hands in hers. I watched her round, globe breast sway as she moved. Yes, my maid was so gorgeous and perfect. There was nothing about her body I didn't like. Come here, I pulled her against me and kissed her lips. She moaned. Her lips tasted like rose petals and were just as soft. Devi really thought I would be forced to have sex with her manservants. She was beyond delusional. Sean, get her. Rip her filthy top off so her men can see her goods, Devi ordered. Are you trying to distract me? Vika asked, giggling as she pulled away. Oh well, she knew me well. Yes, I was distracting her because I didn't want her to worry about the things I'd seen. Your family name is Grannim, right? Can I ask your parents' name? I asked. Vika sighed and rolled her eyes. Damn, she caught on to my tactics quickly. Yeah, my mother is Magda Grannim, and my father is Robert Grannim, she said. What do your parents do? I asked. I slipped my arm around her shoulder and tucked her body close to mine. With skin on skin, warmth pumped through my veins with my blood. Vika rested her head against mine. I breathed in her scent. She smelled fresh like the mist off a waterfall. Drunk on her scent, my eyelids drooped. My mother is a maid, like me. My father is a guard in the castle, she explained. Are you surprised by that? Vika asked, pulling away from me. I don't know, maybe a little, I admitted with a shrug. You just seem so different. At least, your strength and potential didn't match your family's status. What can I say? I'm full of surprises, Vika giggled. She hopped up and skipped away from me. Her pale skin glowed in the moonlight, accenting the curves of her hips and breasts. She was like a dancing forest nymph. I groaned, salivating as I watched her go. Oh, if she wanted me to chase her, I was going to chase her. Sean grabbed me from behind. I was done being pushed around, snarling. I broke free of Sean, twisting away from her. I jumped up and ran after her. I grabbed her from behind, pinning her to my chest. Vika laughed and squirmed against me. You can't get away from me, I whispered, nibbling the back of her ear. Vika giggled and squirmed again, sending a shudder right into my groin. What's this? I've never seen this before, I asked, nibbling lightly on her birthmark. Oh, that? Vika muttered. It is a birthmark, right? I asked. Vika shook her head. This didn't show up until after I shifted. She nodded toward her right shoulder. I said, stroking my chin. I've never heard of that before. It's cool. At least, I don't need to bother the tattooist now, she joked. Want more tattoos? From me? I smirked and stared at the hickeys I left on her shoulders. Go away. She turned around and put on her clothes with red cheeks. I wanted to pull her in my arms again, but the horizon started to glow with the rising sun. We shared a quick goodbye kiss and headed in opposite directions. I watched her departing back and looked back the road to the castle. I had to find out the truth of that tragedy. Chapter 21, My Dearest Kira, Asher's POV. I paced back and forth in my room. After the night I'd had, I should have been sleeping. But I didn't feel tired. All I was concerned about was Vika's moon birthmark. A moon birthmark, I muttered. Her eyes widened, and she stumbled back. Yes, I was stronger than her now. I glared at Sean and then at Devi. I clasped my hands behind my back as I paced, back and forth. The rug started to indent beneath my feet. I'd been taught that moon birthmarks belonged to several royal bloodlines, but a waxing crescent moon, like the one Vika had, didn't belong to the kingdom of Bitha, though. I had no idea what that mark meant. Maybe I could ask Master Repthus later. Vika said her mother's name was Magda. I continued to organize the information I had so far. I stopped pacing. Magda? She still worked in the castle. I must have heard this name before, or even seen her. She was a maid. Wait, my dream. Magda had been the maid in my dream. She had been the one carrying the infant, covering her face. I tried to remember what the baby in my nightmare looked like. Blonde hair, sweet smile. What was the color of her eyes? My fingers tapped my arm, and it worked. They were green, which was totally different from Magda's brown eyes. So, was that baby Vika? I started pacing again, huffing each time I turned and changed direction. Vika had a royalty birthmark. Magda had carried her from the castle the night of the accident. She and Magda looked nothing alike. Robert Grannim was Vika's father. I once trained with soldiers and guards several years ago. The Omega Guard, who possessed dark, curly hair, was stronger than others and impressed me. He seemed to be called Robert. His hair was also dark and not blonde. If Vika also was not like her father, who was she? She kept pushing me ahead of her. I tripped over my own feet, growling each time. I gritted my teeth when Sean's skin pinched against mine. What the? Sean trailed off. How'd you? Devi trailed off. No matter. You can't fight off all three of them. The sweat began to form on my palms. My heart was beating faster and faster because of the possible speculation I had just come up with. Kira's POV, my queen, are you sure this is the right time? My beta, Luca, asked, standing between me and the door to the throne room. This stupid war has to end, and I must do it, I said, flipping my blonde hair over my shoulder. But, my queen, leaving Lanham, even temporarily. Silence. I snapped, holding a hand up. Luca snapped his mouth shut. I nodded, pulling the hood of my cloak over my head. No one could see me leave. Please, Queen Kira, if you are caught, or worse, Lanham will fall. With the king now passed, you are all we have, Luca argued. Luca, you are more than capable of watching the throne in my stead, I said, pointing to the throne. I arched an eyebrow at him. He took a small step away from me, shifting his eyes between me and the throne. How did I end up with such a lame beta? No, that wasn't being fair. Beta Luca always pulled through when needed. He had always picked up the slack since the untimely demise of my late husband, the former Alpha King. I have to do this, I said firmly. This conflict has gone on long enough, and there is only one way to end it. Get her. I saw Sean and the two males all lunge at me. Even if I died in this room, I would not let them touch me. Just be careful, Your Majesty. I don't want to lose you too, Luca said. Oh, you're not getting rid of me that easily, I assured, giggling. Luca rolled his eyes at me. I tightened my cloak around my neck and arms and headed out. A car was waiting for me in front of the castle. I had to travel light so I could remain hidden. Let's go, I said to the driver, pulling my hood further down to cover my face. I rested my head against the car window, watching the countryside go by. Lanham was my home. I'd grown up there, lived my whole life there. Now, I was leaving it behind. I took a deep breath when looking out of the car window at the street lights far away from me. I looked at the face reflected in the car window. My sister's blonde hair was thicker and longer than mine. Krisha, I whispered, my poor sister. She died 18 years ago in an accident, but Badon Brennan claimed Lanham sent killers to assassinate the king, queen, and princess. Why would I attack my sister? Why would I threaten my niece? I scoffed and sank lower in the seat. I took the letter I always had with me out of my pocket. It was from Krisha. I remembered every word on the letter, but I couldn't help but open it when I was irritable. Letter, my dearest Kira, I miss you greatly. Your smiles have always lit up my life. To think you are so far from me. Yes, I miss you. Asher's POV, hold the bitch down. Teach her a lesson about where she belongs. You go first. I heard Devi shout. I hope you and King Anders are getting along well. Before I married Alpha King Magnus, I never thought I'd love anyone else so much. He has become my everything, and he is the perfect king and ruler of Bitha. You must feel the same about your mate. But let me tell you, don't close your heart off to the possibilities. I never thought I could love another so much, but then my daughter was born. My sweet, perfect Princess Vika. My heart is flooded with love for her. It is a new kind of love that I've never known. I hope with all my heart, dear sister, that you too get to experience the gift of children and the love they bring you. Love always, Krisha, and letter. I'd once been so jealous of Krisha. I shook my head, glancing out at the rolling hills that passed the car window. Anders, my mate, once told me he really loved running in hills, so did I. Anders and I were so in love and happy. We had planned to have a big family, with lovely babies playing and running around us. Badon had led one retaliation after another for 18 years against my kingdom. He called it retribution. Of course, we would fight right back, but I lost Anders, my alpha king of Lanham. We hadn't even had a chance to start our own family. He had been taken from me too soon, just like Krisha and Magnus. Snarling, I burst in through Devi's door. I froze when I saw what was happening in the room. Sian had her arms around Vika, holding her in a corner. He had been slain in one of Vadon Brennan's justified attacks on my country. I clenched my hands into fists, my fingernails cutting straight through my palms and drawing blood. That evil had taken everything from me. Tears sprang to my eyes. My sweet, perfect Princess Devika. I reread the letter and paused at my niece's name, Devika. I'd never even seen the baby girl before Krisha and Magnus were killed. I heard she was rescued by Vadon Brennan and served as the princess after that accident. Luca told me he heard Princess of Bitha was fine, and she was engaged with Prince Regent, the son of Regent King, that demon, Vadon Brennan. I couldn't let that happen. I even doubted if she was fine. I needed to see her for myself. She was my only family left. She should have shifted now. Once she knew how evil Vadon Brennan was, she would help me kill Vadon and end the ridiculous war. 18 years was long enough. It was time to bring this eye for an eye to an end. Stop here, I ordered the driver. I pitched forward, slamming my head on the seat ahead of me. Hey, sorry, the driver said perfunctorily. Yeah, that wasn't fooling anyone. He wasn't sorry at all. Was this really how civilian drivers treated their fares? He obviously didn't know I was the queen, and that's what I wanted. He was so not getting a tip from me. I got out of the car and stared at the long road ahead, the road to Bitha. There were two male servants there, one holding Vika's legs apart, the other grinning at her with a disgusting smile. I couldn't announce my presence by arriving in a car. No, this had to be a stealth operation. I sprayed enough perfume for myself to hide my scent. One step forward, and I crossed into the kingdom of Bitha. I was in enemy territory now. I clutched my cloak closer to me and walked forward. Alone again, but I wasn't terrified because I had missions. I would reunite with my niece, Vika Bitha. And I would kill Vadon Brennan. Chapter 22, Mysteries and Secrets, Vika's POV, yeah. I yawned, stretching my arms. I glanced at the time. Had I really slept until noon? Yeah. Asher and I had had a really long night. I curled on my side and hugged my fluttering stomach. I giggled and squirmed. Shoo, this isn't the time, I heard my mother say. I've been hearing. Another voice whispered. It trailed off quietly. Who was that? It wasn't my dad. Who else would my mom be whispering to? I kicked my covers back and went to the top of the stairs. I sank to the floor and pressed my back to the wall. No, she isn't ready, I heard my dad say. That's not up to you anymore, the stranger's voice said. The voice sounded familiar. Where had I heard it before? I tapped the side of my head. Come on, brain, think. Where have you heard that voice? We are her parents, my mother argued. I swallowed, my throat tight. My blood boiled with anger. I launched myself across the room and ripped the two males away from Vika. They were talking about me. Things have changed, the stranger said. His voice was smooth and fluid like water trickling through rocks. I'd heard that voice before when it was talking about the accident. Master Rufus? What the heck was he doing in my house with my parents? I stood up and went into the living room. My mother, father, and Master Rufus all stopped talking. My hammering heart was the only sound in my ears. What's going on? I croaked, crossing my arms. I swallowed. My mouth was as dry as sand. Vika, you're awake. I was starting to think you were going to sleep the whole day away, my mother said with a twinkle in her eye. Master Rufus, I said, nodding to him. Vika, it's good to see you again, Rufus said. He leaned back on the couch, crossing his legs. I narrowed my eyes at him. A man like Rufus shouldn't have been so comfortable in a home like ours. Had he been here before? Honey, I made you some lunch, my mother said. She smiled, nodding to the kitchen. Her smile didn't touch her eyes. I saw her gaze shift quickly between my father and Master Rufus. What were you all talking about? I pressed. I looked at each of them, getting nothing but blank expressions in return. Nothing you need to worry about, Master Rufus said, standing up. Prince Asher, Devi gasped, her face turning white. Get away from her. I ordered, glaring at the two he-wolves. We'll finish this another time. He winked at me. I smiled stiffly. I couldn't be rude to Master Rufus, but he was being weird. The fact he was in my house and talking to my parents at all was weird. Why was Master Rufus here? I asked as soon as the door closed behind him. I narrowed my eyes at my parents. We all work in the castle together, my father said, another non-answer. Speaking of work, I've got to go. My shift today. He kissed my mother on the head and left. It was like my dad couldn't get away fast enough. What was going on, Mom? What is all this about? Why are you all avoiding me? I asked, stamping my foot on the floor. They were treating me like I was some child, but I was an adult now. Honey, if it is important, you'll know. Now, please go eat your lunch. It is getting cold, she said, waving toward the kitchen. I growled under my breath, stomping off toward the kitchen. I'd caught them talking about me, and they'd all just blown me off. Maybe Asher would know something. He was Prince Regent, and he did seem friendly with Rufus. Tonight, I'd see him again for more training. We could talk then. I smiled to myself, my toes wiggling in my shoes. What would we really be training for though? Vaidon's POV. I pulled a cloak over my head, disappearing into the shadows of darkness. It wasn't hard to tell what they were thinking about. How could they do this to her? To my mate? Devi had gone too far this time. No one could see me, the King Regent, slipping out of the castle without my guard. Not that I feared an attack. I was more than capable of handling myself and taking out threats. I just didn't want word to get back to my wife. She would find a way to make my life hell. Some relationships were necessary, at least, that was what I kept telling myself. King Regent Vaidon, a sweet bell of a voice whispered from the shadows. Her voice slithered down my spine, settling in my groin and heating my flesh. Mira, I spoke her name. She stepped from the shadows, tossing her honey gold hair over her shoulder and batting thick eyelashes over her sea green eyes. I've been waiting for you. You're late, she said, her cherry red lips parting in a smile. I chuckled and reached for her, placing a hand on her shoulder. Her powder-soft skin was smoother than glass. Saliva pooled in my mouth. I wished I could run my tongue along that skin. It has been too long, my dear. I pulled her to me, pressing my lips to hers. Scorching lava churned in my stomach. Mira panted against my lips. I should have taken her then. Wait, Vaidon, I asked you here for a reason, she said, pulling away from me, breathing hard. I growled, my skin turning to ice when her body wasn't against mine anymore. After we've had our fun, I grumbled, sucking her neck. I stared at her and scoffed. She shrank away from me. That was good. At least she was still scared of me. The organ between my legs twitched, chafing against my pants. I would much rather be satisfying my physical urges before listening to irrelevant words. Her body got softer in my arms. I gasped and slipped my hand into her collar. After my desire had briefly subsided, Mira panted and lay on my chest. I've heard some rumors, she said. Rumors? I asked, raising an eyebrow. There are rumors in the city of rebellions and uprisings, she said, her eyes so wide that the night sky reflected in them. Keep going. I frowned and put my hands on her shoulders. Mira sighed. There are those who rebel against rulers that treat their underlings like garbage. I've heard whispers about Princess Devi. Some people are saying that she is cruel, beating her maids and servants. She is young. She will grow into herself and learn how to be a good queen, I assured. Is she even the princess? Mira asked, turning to me. Her face was a mask of stone. What? I asked, reeling back. How can you ask that? Some of the whispers say she isn't the true princess, and that is why rebellions are forming. The people of Bitha don't want to follow a false queen, she told me. That's not possible, I insisted. Princess Devi is the sole heir of King Magnus and Queen Krisha. You shouldn't doubt it, Mira. All right, Mira said, smiling again. I think that's enough talking for tonight, I said, slipping my hands around her waist and kissing her again. I stepped toward the two Omega he-wolves. They both stepped back, bowing their heads. Prince Asher, please forgive us, one of them said. Vika's POV, Asher and I sparred at the training grounds, back and forth. We attacked, blocked, evaded, and attacked again. It was a seemingly endless dance, a struggle for power that neither of us was willing to back down from. Where's your head at? Asher asked when we stopped for a break. What? I asked. You're distracted, Asher chuckled. I sighed and looked at my feet. It seemed I couldn't hide anything from him now. He knew me so well. You're close with Master Rufus, right? I asked. Asher grabbed my chin and pulled my face up. Our eyes met. His were bright, and his brow furrowed. What happened to him? He asked. I shrugged. He was at my home today, talking to my parents. I thought you'd know if he had a relationship with them or something. It seemed like they were talking about me. Asher smirked at me and released my face. It was infectious, and I smiled back. He'd probably think you're smart after what you said in his class. Maybe he was asking your parents if you could be his student, Asher suggested and winked at me. I rolled my eyes. Well, I hadn't thought of that. Why did my mind always go to the worst case? Yeah, maybe I'm overthinking it, I said, shaking my head. I slipped my arms around Asher's waist, but if he asked, I'd have to turn him down. I already have a really great teacher, I said playfully. I tried to kick Sean's shin. The Gamma stepped out of the way and laughed harshly. You're no match for me, I growled, advancing on them again. They both trembled, putting their hands up in surrender. I took a deep breath in, commanding my voice to enforce my will on them. Asher bounced his eyebrows at me. Yes, you do, he said. He leaned in and pressed his lips to mine. Chapter 23. It sounded crazy. Asher's POV. I kissed Vika gently, moving my lips slowly and tenderly. I slipped my hands around her face, holding her securely. She wrapped her arms around me tighter, pulling us closer. Vika moaned, her breath trembling against my lips. Heat spread through my veins like fire. I wanted to pull her closer, but I stopped myself. I tensed my hands around her face, taking a half step back. Every part of me wanted to be closer to her. If I didn't pull back, I wouldn't be able to stop, Vika whined, clinging to me with grabby fingers. She grabbed my hands off her face and put them on her hips, holding my wrists and moving my hands up and down her sides. Vika, I whispered. Instead of answering me, she nipped at my lower lip. I groaned, my pulse pounding in my veins, pounding in my stomach, pounding lower into my groin. Sighing, I pulled away. Vika gasped, looking at me with wide eyes. My fingers twitched when I saw her rosy cheeks and swollen lips. She was so amorous and passionate. Damn, I was stupid for pushing her away. Who in their right mind would turn down a woman who looked like her? Well, I apparently wasn't in my right mind because I did just that. The last thing I wanted was to let my nightmares come between us. Get out, I snarled. Both the Omega males went rigid. They turned around and walked away without any resistance. Is something wrong? She asked, breathing hard. No, I said, shaking my head. I put a hand on her warm cheek. She smiled, casting her eyes down. I brushed my thumb across her cheek. The heavy, pulsing heat between my legs subsided, and I took a deep breath. I wanted Vika, there was no question in that, but things had been strange. You seem distracted, Vika said, taking my hand from her face and squeezing my fingers. We had an intense training session tonight. Sorry, I'm tired, I explained. Yeah, that sounded lame. If someone fed me that line, I wouldn't believe it. Yeah, I'm pretty exhausted too, she said, her tone flat. I saw the light leave her eyes, and she started avoiding my gaze. I sighed, my heart breaking in my chest. It was so unfair of me to push her away like that. I knew what she wanted. I wanted it too, but I had some things to figure out first. Hey, I said, taking Vika's hand and kissing the back of it. We'll get together again soon, okay? Okay, she said, flashing a bright smile. I saw that the smile didn't touch her eyes. I bowed my head. Oh no, I'd hurt her feelings. I hadn't wanted to, but I still managed to do it. Good night, my brave warrior, I said, kissing the back of her hand again. Good night, sweet prince, she said. Vika glanced over her shoulder at me several times as she walked away. I turned to Sean and Vika. Sean still had her arms around Vika. Her hair was a mess. Her beautiful green eyes were filled with fear. That look. All the heat returned to my core at once. I watched Vika disappear into the darkness. My heart continued to beat slow and heavy like a gong vibrating through my bones. I liked when Vika was forward. It was just bad timing. I already had too many questions about my nightmares and not enough answers. I'm sorry, Vika, I whispered to the darkness. Who? I sighed, opening my eyes. Wow, I'd made it through the whole night without a single nightmare. It seemed like forever since that had happened. I sat up and rubbed my temples, with no tension in my muscles or no sweat on my brow. I was refreshed and well-rested. Who knew going one night without a nightmare would feel so amazing? I hadn't put it together before, but after Vika and I had sex, my nightmare had been different. When I'd looked back on other nightmares I'd had since discovering Vika was my maid, I'd found a pattern. Yeah, I knew, it sounded crazy, right? I was certain that after learning Vika was my maid, I'd started seeing things more clearly in my nightmares. I'd also started having new visions since we kissed. After we had sex, the heavy and strange fog hadn't been as dense. I sighed and laid back on the pillows, a perk of being a prince regent. Most days, I could lounge in bed all day if I wanted. Man, I'd really hurt Vika's feelings last night, and the worst part was that I had to pretend I didn't even notice. Meeting my eyes, my brave mate smiled at me, letting me know she was fine. That only made me feel more furious. I thought it would be easier for her if I pretended I didn't notice how badly she wanted me. I didn't want her to think I was outright rejecting her. It wasn't like I didn't want her either, goddess. I had wanted her badly. Groaning, I got out of bed. I paced back and forth a little. Vika's hurt look still swimming in my mind. Could I apologize to her? That meant admitting to rejecting her. I didn't want to explain the nightmare situation to her. I turned on the tap and poured cold water on my face. Right, Asher. Tell your mate you don't want to sleep with her, because you don't know what it is doing to your nightmares. That will go over like a ton of bricks. There was no way I was going to hurt her feelings even more. As much as I wanted her, I wanted to be able to enjoy sex with her without wondering how it would affect my nightmares. I wanted our intimate relationship to be just about us, not about new visions I might have. Either that or I had to figure out how to stop my nightmares. There was only one way I would think of to get the nightmares to stop. I need to find out the truth, I muttered to myself. Master Ruthvis would know the truth of what happened. He could tell me what was real and what wasn't. I nodded to myself. Master Ruthvis would give me answers. He might even know something about why Vika's presence changed my dreams. That Gamma maid, Sean, had scratches all up and down her arms. I knew she had put up a good fight. Release her, now, I demanded. No, I had no intention of revealing Vika as my maid. She was my secret for now. I ran into Princess Devi on my way to see Master Ruthvis, like literally ran into her coming around a corner. Hey, watch it! Devi snapped, stumbling backward. No surprise that she was instantly angry. I reached out with lightning reflexes and caught her arm. I'm sorry, Princess, I said as I steadied her. Oh, Asher, I didn't notice it was you, the princess said. She smiled sweetly. You can collide with me anytime you want. She winked. I clicked my tongue. Devi's smile faded quickly, and she put her hands on her hips. Are you still mad at me? She asked, pouting. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. Oh, Devi, she was kind of pathetic. I almost felt bad for her. If she hadn't been so cruel to Vika, I probably could have felt bad for her. We were still technically engaged. I'd asked my father to break it off, and I'd told her we couldn't be together. But the arrangement hadn't officially been broken. No, I'm just in a hurry, I said. I tried to step around her, but Devi stepped directly in my way. A hurry to where? She asked, her sweet smile returning. Gag me. She was trying so hard to flirt and be cute. Devi, I don't have time for this, I argued. Devi's brow creased, and she tilted her head to the side. You are still mad. I can hear it in your voice, she insisted. I opened my mouth to answer, and my jaw froze. Sean looked at Devi. I turned to Princess Devi. She was still pale, and her legs were trembling. Sean slowly released Vika. Devi's dark hair fell away from her neck and my eyes locked on her. On the side of Devi's neck, I noticed a half-moon birthmark, almost the exact same mark that Vika had on her shoulder. If Devi had the mark too, did that mean she and Vika were related? That wasn't even possible, was it? What the hell was going on? I rushed forward and scooped her into my arms. I didn't bother to look at Sean or Devi. I no longer cared if they saw me with her. I couldn't believe anyone dared touch my maid or plan to violate her. It was outrageous. Vika, are you all right? I murmured to her as I carried her. It was such a stupid question. Of course, she wasn't okay, not after what those goons were going to do to her. I couldn't fight them all, Vika muttered softly. Her body collapsed against my chest, her muscles turning to goo. Do you really need me to kick your ass again? She asked. Are you so sure you'd win? I asked. Why don't we throw down and find out? It was like she knew she was safe, and she didn't have to hold on to that tension anymore. I shouldn't have let her continue to serve Devi after knowing she was abused by that crazy princess. I'm okay, you can put me down now, Vika said. I sighed, running my fingers through her messy hair. I didn't want to let her go. I wanted to keep her in my arms, keep her safe for all eternity. Maybe you should take a week off, I offered, with a clear voice to make Devi hear it. Her eyes darted to Sean and Devi. I grabbed her chin and pulled her back so her eyes were looking at me. You were almost sexually assaulted. Take some time, rest, regain your strength. That's my order. I tried to make my voice sound gentle. My maid had suffered a lot today, and I didn't want to scare her. Vika smiled weakly at me. It nearly broke my heart. She nodded and left. After Vika left the room, I turned to Sean and Devi. There was no need to suppress my anger anymore. The princess's face paled all over again. Chapter 17. No, not yet. Alone at last, I said cruelly as Devi and Sean huddled together. At least, Sean had the decency to appear afraid. I needed to make sure that neither of them would lay a hand on Vika again. What should I do with the two of you? Warning after warning, and you still challenge my patience, I hissed. I was more confident now that I'd shifted. Yeah, until you get to the place. Sean shoved me into Devi's room. This isn't any of your business. Devi snarled. That is where you are wrong, I snapped, putting my hands on my hips. I don't need you to tell me how I handle my servants, Devi said, pointing the finger at me. No, you don't, but I won't allow you to hurt any member. I waved her off dismissively. Devi rolled her eyes and looked at Sean. It was like she was looking for support from her servant. Did she really not have the strength to face me? I found that amusing, since she was supposed to be from a strong bloodline. Devi was about ready to roll over and submit. That wasn't the actions of a princess. You're nothing but a child throwing tantrums because you're not getting the attention that you want, I told her. Sean tried to take a step forward, but I glared at her, and she stood still at Devi's side. The two of them were toxic. I took a deep breath, reaching deep inside myself for that strong, commanding voice. I shouldn't have used that power that I had kept a secret for years, but I would go mad if I kept watching Vika being hurt by them again. Sean and Devi, you aren't allowed to hurt Vika ever again, I commanded. It was risky because Devi was the daughter of the late Alpha King and Luna Queen. She should have been strong enough to withstand my command. She might have even been irritated by me, but at least, I would stop that Gamma maid from helping Devi catch and hurt Vika in a few days. A shudder ran through both their bodies. Devi winced, and she stumbled forward, leaning against her bed. I fell forward onto the floor, my hands and knees hit hard. I grunted, my arms shaking under my weight. Sean glared at me. She grabbed Devi's arm and helped her stand upright again. I cocked my head to the side, shocked by Devi's response to my voice. Why was she crumbling under my voice? She had no power against me. It was like there was nothing about her that was superior or strong. And Sean was just a Gamma. She'd have to obey me, but even she seemed to withstand my power more than Devi. What did that mean? You have no right to interfere with what I do with the servants that belong to me, Devi said, standing straight. It looked like she hadn't realized my voice's power. I just did, I scoffed. Whatever the reason, at least my ability worked on her. My maid could be safe for now. Why? Devi wailed, leaning against Sean. What is so special about her? She's not you, I snapped harshly. She stood frozen with her eyes filled with tears. Devi gasped. She looked like I'd just slapped her. Yeah, I didn't need Devi thinking she was anything special to me, but she was still a princess, the only daughter of the late Alpha and Luna. If I continued to cross too many lines with her, it'd get back to my father. Before I found a way to persuade my father, it was not a good idea to let him know what I did today. Please behave like a royal, Devi. Care and protect your pack members instead of abusing them, I sighed, softening my tone. Special delivery, Sean sang. Thank you, dear Sean. I heard Devi laughing. My shoulders ached as I pushed myself off the floor. She wiped the tears from her face and asked me, if I change, will you love me? I'm sorry, Devi. I shook my head and left Devi and Sean clinging to each other. On my way to looking for Vika, I kept thinking of Devi's reaction to my voice. Why was Devi so weak, being related to the former king and queen? It didn't make any sense. She was supposed to be of Alpha, but she'd caved under my voice. Vika's POV, Vika, wait. I had my hand on the door to leave the castle. I turned around after hearing Asher's voice. Asher was running toward me. Automatically, I smiled. He was my savior, my knight in shining armor after today. How do you feel now? He gave me a concerned look as his long fingers ruffled the hair stuck to the side of my neck. I'm well, and I was taking 1 week off as you said. I held out my arms to show I was fine. I didn't get injured just now. And I even left some marks on Sean's arms, though I didn't beat all of them. Yeah, of course, you are fine, my brave warrior. Asher smiled and took both my hands in his. I always wanted to feel this giddy and special around him. But would it never change? Come with me. I want to take you to a secret place, Asher said. He pulled me into another corridor and pressed his back against the wall. I gasped when the wall opened to reveal a secret passageway behind him. He smirked and pulled me inside. What is this place? I asked. It was so dark, but I could see Asher after I got wolf vision. His blue eyes were bright and charming in the darkness. I stood up and glared at the princess, my eyes widened. Standing behind Devi, I saw 2 other Hyomegas. Secret tunnels are everywhere in the castle, Asher explained. I know a few of them because Amina and I used to explore them when we were younger. Before I could ask another question, Asher pulled me against him, stealing a kiss in the dark. I moaned, the taste of his lips as sweet as honey. My heartbeat quickened in my chest. His hot lips and gentle touches on my back made me forget where we were or how long we kissed each other. His sigh flew into my ears after our lips parted. Vika, you'll never know how angry I was the moment I saw what the 2 assholes were going to do to you. He cupped my face. I touched his face and whispered, then, you came to my rescue. It just so happened this time. I should have kept you away from Devi. I knew what I had to do, what I wanted to do. He laid his lips on mine again. The soft kisses sent tickles all the way down to my toes. I giggled. How could he be so vicious to my attackers and then so kind and gentle to me? I loved it. Then, what is that? I asked. We're already sneaking into tunnels and stealing kisses, Asher chuckled, stealing another quick kiss. I whined when he pulled away, wanting the kiss to go on longer. I want to keep us moving forward so the rest of the world knows we are mates. He looked into my eyes, and our gazes intertwined and could no longer be separated. I gasped, my heart galloping in my chest.